if you follow American sports or America in general, especially when it comes to branding, when it comes to branding for Americans, it's go big or go home. So Chicago Fire has released a short documentary called On the Rise from South Africa to Chicago Fire. This document it showcases the signing or the transfer of two South African players, Puselezo Ditejane and Mbegezeli Mbogazi, but mainly Mbegezeli Mbogazi. And I guess most of us as South Africans, you will understand why it centers around Mbegezeli Mbogazi. It's a great documentary. It takes about 23 minutes and it showcases the behind the scenes of what happened, why these two players ended up at Chicago Fire and nowhere else, and where they are from. So, but when you look at closely, this wasn't really made for a South African audience. If it was made for South African audience who don't understand what's going on or what happened between these two players, how they got to the US and ended up playing for Chicago Fire, or maybe an audience who don't follow sports that much or football in general and they don't have a clue how the move of these two players came about. So it's an interesting documentary, and I want us to get a bit of deep dive into it and look at what happened or what was said on the documentary and some of the interesting things and interesting people covered in the documentary. If you can remember well, the move from TS Galaxy to Chicago Fire for Pusoletso Ditejane came after Chicago Fire has announced the signing of Mbegezeli Mbogazi. And when they signed Mbegezeli Mbogazi, most of us thought, that was dead and that was it. But Chicago Fire decided to go, two for two. That they are not only going to sign Mbegezeli Mbogazi, but they will try to get another South African. And they opted for a middle field winger who is Bisolose Ditejane, who's been very, very incredible for TS Galaxy. And he started out at the development, at the Kaizer Chiefs development, and they tell his story, but they don't tell his story as much as they tell the story from Mbagazi. But we get to see some of us who didn't really know Ditajane's background. We really get to get that a little bit of that peek inside the microscope and see from where he comes from. I didn't even know that he comes from Christiana, a small village in Northwest. So Tejani, like me, Motswana, although me and him are not from maybe the same Northwest region. He comes from Christiana. That's something that I didn't know. And then the funny part, he says a plus, like he said, because we're Christian and that's a small plus. So that's what he said. And they focus on how he got to TS Galaxy and went from TS Galaxy to Chicago Fire. And he said he remember Tim Sugazi, the chairman of TS Galaxy, calling him during the AFCON break. Remember in December and January, it was AFCON break, and he had an injury. I didn't even know that at that time said he had an ankle injury at that time. It wasn't that big of an injury, but he said he remember he had an injury, and Tumsigazi, while the team was gearing to get back to camp and get ready for the second round of the season, he called him and said, "My boy, look, you are not coming back to Galaxy. You are moving away and you will be going to Chicago. You are going to Chicago Fire. You are going to the US of A." And said he was happy, he was amazed. And at some point when he get to his apartment in Chicago, he sort of sat down and reflected and asked himself questions like, one of the things that he said he asked himself a question that, what is it that you want in life? You are here now. What's next for you? And that's where he realized he has to up his game. He has to become a sort of a bigger player than he used to be at TS Galaxy. I guess different levels need different efforts. So he was right for it. And as you've seen, he and Mbogasi share a lot of moments. I guess because of their homeboys. So most of the time they are together, and it's an incredible thing to see. But like I said, documentary mostly focuses on Mbegazelo Mbogasi, and you'll understand why this is a player who came from sort of I don't want to use the notion that he became a success overnight, but remember at some point he was playing at Orlando Pirates DDC, then he was promoted to the first team in 2024 under Jose Rivero, the coach who used to coach Orlando Pirates. Then he spent about a season and a half with Orlando Pirates before going to Chicago Fire. He also went to Chicago Fire the same transfer with Pusodi Tejani, and they went mid-season during the January transfer window. So Mbogazi was playing AFCON during that time while this move was happening. So when he came back from AFCON in Morocco with Bafana, he couldn't go to Orlando Pirates. He had to go straight to Chicago, and he said, what he said is that this came as like a moment for me. It was like a moment of realization, and it made him so happy because of he could see that his life is changing for good, like from Orlando Pirates, then to Chicago Fire. Things were getting better and better and better. If you don't know, Mbogazi is from Tlhutluwe in KwaZulu Natal. He said he was playing in local football, like your local tournaments. That's where he was discovered. And he said one of his coaches who discovered him told him that, what, something's going to materialize because you are a great player. And indeed, it did materialize. He was called to Amazulu. Then he trained with Amazulu for only 3 days before he went to Orlando Pirates, and he played for Orlando Pirates DDC team. The DDC team is the reserve team of Orlando Pirates. He played there, and he was called to the first team, and that's where he saw that his life has taken a serious upwards trajectory. Currently, he's the most voted player going to the MLS All Stars. Remember, the All Stars will be playing against the Liga MX, the Mexican Liga MX All Stars. So he's the current most voted, and you understand why. South Africans love South Africans, especially who do well overseas. We follow them, we push them, we love them, we root for them. I guess Mbogazi is getting that love, and coming from Orlando Pirates, a bigger institution, a big club, currently winning the league this season, so he was bound to get all the love. Plus, he performed very well during his time at Orlando. He was such a darling to Orlando Pirates supporters. So when he left, it was bound to happen that he's gonna get all the love while he was still at Chicago. The documentary also covers Nkosinathi Sibisi, who is the current captain of Orlando Pirates, the same team that Mbogazi used to play for. So Sibisi talks about how he also saw Mbogazi during his DDC time, during the reserve time, and he could see the potential in him. And he was tasked when Mbogazi was promoted to the first team. Sibisi was tasked to be the guy who takes Mbogazi under his wing and show him the ropes of being in the first team of Orlando Pirates. Remember, Orlando Pirates, like I said, is a bigger institution, a bigger team. So young players like Mbogazi will need a mentor. So he was tasked to be Mbogazi's mentor, and I will say he did an incredible job because of look how Mbogazi turned out to be during his time at Orlando Pirates in the first lap. And at some point, he captained Orlando Pirates while Sibisi was not a regular and he was injured. There's also a man like Ncikazi who was talking about how Mbogazi was sort of like a generational talent when they first saw him during the reserve team, during the DDC time, and when he came into the first team, his determination to succeed at the first team was very loud. You could see this is a player who has intentions to do great, and he ended up doing great. So he said, they had a gem in Mbogazi, and they loved every minute that he spent in that lab. And remember, Mandla Ncikazi spent a lot of time at Orlando Pirates. He saw a lot of players come and go. But the way he speaks of Mbogazi, you can see that he saw something different. He saw a player of once in a generation, kind of. But it was impressive to hear what he said about a young player like. Then there's a piece covering Kabelo Gungwane. Remember, Kabelo Gungwane is the founder and current owner of Kasi Flavor South African Sportswear. If you can look at the sweater, is it the sweater that he's wearing or the shirt that he's wearing? That's what his brand does, and he's the son of the late Sheikh Gungwane legend. So they're speaking of a culture of football in South Africa and how football and sportswear and a lot of things intertwine. There's also a piece covering the legendary OG Molefe. If you don't know OG Molefe, then clearly you are not a football fan in South Africa. This is a legend. They also talk about how the media influence football, the culture, the environment of South Africa in general when it comes to Then there's another legendary journalist, Karen Mazola Molefe, who I very, very much like. I like this guy. This guy will give you nothing but proper news, and it also covers him where he speaks about Mbogazi, the culture of South Africa, and football in general. So go check out that documentary.